This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 262, Backwards Compatibility. Welcome to Talking Drupal. I'm Stephen Cross, and in today's show we discuss Jeff Geerling's recent blog post called Backwards Compatibility. While we had him on the show last week, we actually didn't have time to review his post in detail, so we're going to do that today, and we're going to talk about other things as well. And joining me as usual is John Picozzi from Oomph.
Hello,
what's new, John?
Internet friends. What's new? I have a door. You can see it behind me here if you're watching the video.
Totally awesome. We have a door.
It is totally awesome. You know, Nick was telling me before we started recording here that you know, it only took me 7 years to get a door, when in reality we've lived in this house for 11 years, and to be fair, I was doing just fine until this whole coronavirus thing, and then it became very evident to me that, hey, I need a door.
Didn't you have a door and you took it down at one point?
Yeah, so this is a bedroom. So it had a door, and we took it down because it was an office, and ultimately the door was dumb because it opened into the room like doors do, and it just kind of got into the way and took up space in the room. So we ended up taking it out. Took it out like probably like the first couple of weeks we lived here. Took it out and was like, nope, not going to replace it. But instead, I don't know if you can see it. Well, you can kind of see it, but we got a barn door, which is super cool because it's on a track and it slides side to side, and it does not take up any more space in the room. And it's pretty awesome. So, you know, if you have a situation where you need a door that doesn't come into your room, barn door, went to Home Depot, it's a Masonite barn door kit. Comes with everything you need. Pretty easy to set up. My wife and I did it in like an afternoon. And
nice.
The only thing is there's comes with all the hardware you need, but I'm buying different door hardware because the hardware is like black matte, and all of our hardware in our house is brushed nickel. So there are a couple of other things that we're buying like outside of the kit, but yeah, everything has it in the kit. Went up pretty easy. It hasn't fallen off the wall yet. So
There's only one flaw I see, John. There's no lock.
no, so that is a slight issue. You know, the other option, pretty straightforward because it's a sliding door. I can always put a 2x4 between the wall and the door to keep it.
Oh, there you go. There's your lock. Right.
So you can put a hook and loop.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, there's locks you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, there are options. There are plenty of options there if things get crazy. But
yeah.
we're working on the rules right now that like if the door is closed, you don't bother me.
Right. You just need a lock that keeps people under 4 feet out is all you're really looking for.
Well, yeah, right.
I think.
Yeah.
Well, also joining us is Nick Laughlin from Enlightened Development. What's new with you, Nick?
So this week, so one of the things I do when I'm kind of working on stuff that's a little less thinking intensive or not meetings is I'll usually listen to something on YouTube, you know, different things. And this past week, I discovered this show called Taskmaster. It's a British show that is one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. So basically, there's a taskmaster and his assistant, and then they have 5 comedians on the show, and they just have different rounds of competitions. And the competition might be move water from this bucket to this other bucket without touching it. And then they just give them some items. Like one of the items I think was a coconut. So one person broke the coconut open and carried scoops of water. One of the contestants paid the assistant 200 pounds to walk the other bucket down because it said they couldn't touch it, but it didn't say nobody could touch it. And so he just carried it down and poured it. So, you know, it's a pretty short show. I think it's about half an hour. There's 4 or 5 rounds each episode. And I've just been, you know, watching a couple episodes of that and, you know, really enjoying British humor. It's kind of a bizarre show. Like they give them some really kind of confusing tasks, and it's funny to see which people think outside the box and which ones think of ways to kind of get around the rules and which ones kind of think like, oh, they say this, so that means I have to do it this way. And it sounds like
it sounds like a corporate team building outing kind of thing.
It could be. I mean, it's especially when people like misunderstand a task, so they impose like restrictions on themselves. I've been really enjoying it.
It's very interesting. I'm sorry. And what service is that on? Where can I find this?
It's on YouTube. It's on their channel.
YouTube. Got it. It's interesting because it kind of reminds me a little bit. I don't know if anybody, Netflix is watching Floor is Lava.
I've not seen it, but it's on my list.
But it's like basically, it's kind of like, similar, like, hey, get from one end of this room to the other without touching the floor because it's lava. It's just interesting to see how people kind of solve problems and how they think through things.
Did you guys ever play the video game Portal?
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds like it's this kind of thing, right?
Portal 1 and Portal 2. I played both. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like this is like almost like a new genre of like game show / TV, like reality TV watching, right? Where you're like, okay, we're going to give these people a problem. And it's like escape rooms, right? You're like, we're going to watch these people try to solve this escape room and then comment on it because it'll be amusing. So, Steven, what's going on with you?
Hey, not much. My wife is back to work, which is my update this week. So she's a school teacher. And in March was thrown into the work from home and remotely teach your children in like a 2-week period. So it was stressful and different. But this September has been dramatically more challenging in that the school she works for is giving the option for students to either be in the classroom or be remote. So she's now in a position where she's responsible for teaching 17 kids. Some of them are at home on their computer watching her teach with live cameras, and she can see them on a computer screen, and also dealing with another 10 or 12 kids in the classroom that are following some really strict distancing guidelines. So
Did her school get her like an assistant, or is she flying solo?
No, she has an assistant. It's not because of this, because in the school she's at, when they reach a certain number of students, they get an assistant, and she's at that level, and I think she has 17. So they have a pretty good student to teacher ratio there already. Yep. But I was just trying to imagine myself like working all day and having a customer of mine or all of my customers being able to watch into my office, right, all day long while I'm working.
Yeah.
Which is what this is, right? Just
stressful.
Just think about what kind of dynamic that brings to your work environment.
I feel like it's worse of both worlds. I mean, distance learning obviously isn't perfect, but it's like if some people are in person and some people are distance, then how do you split that? Like if all are distance learning, you figure something out. If they're all in person, but they're split up day by day or something, then you can focus on them when they're there. But like at the same time, distance and in person, I can imagine how I would approach that.
And then if you're thinking about materials that you use in the classroom, the kids need to get them at home, and the guidelines in the classroom of who can go to the bathroom, and they've got kids broken into what they call pods. So these kids can move with these kids, and anytime they go to the bathroom, these cleaning processes need to happen, and there's a 10-foot barrier around her desk, and it is, I don't know how she's going to deal with it. She's in school this week preparing. Next week is fully remote. Yep. And then the following week is into this hybrid mode. So, I mean, I guess the best scenario could be for her that there's a lockdown before 2 weeks from now. Right.
Yeah.
And
I think we're honestly, I think we're honestly going to start seeing schools. I mean, we're already seeing colleges and schools in the South that open up early.
Yeah.
They're already quarantining for multiple weeks at a time. So I think it's only a matter of time before we're fully remote again.
So I guess the summary of my update. Oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
I was just going to say, from the student standpoint, it's interesting because like you have the teacher perspective, and like the same things are, or the differences are true for the student as well. And it's interesting to see the similarities in how schools are handling it. I was actually talking to somebody today, and they were talking about their daughter who's going into she's going to college, and she's going to be in post-secondary education. And she was excited that she was able to actually go into a school and start learning. And I'm like, interesting. She's excited about that. But I also was like, how is that going to change for somebody learning to be a teacher, right? If you can't actually get into a classroom and do those things. So it's interesting. It's definitely changing the profession.
So I'm going to add to, like, as you drive around town, and you see signs that our health workers are our heroes. I'm going to add the teachers to that list too. About to be what they're about to embark upon is going to be very challenging for them over the next year or so.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the thing I'm really worried about here too is, we shut the schools down when we had less than 1,000 cases almost. Yeah. I think in Massachusetts, and we currently have tens of thousands of cases, and we're doing relatively good. I think it's going to be eye-opening.
I do think. I think the guidelines work, right? I think we've seen that the guidelines, if they're followed, work. So kids do not get the education they get when they're home.
No, I agree. It's a really complex issue.
It's hugely complex, right?
And even if the kids could get that education at home, parents need to work.
Yeah, parents need to work. And kids need to socialize. There's all kinds of issues.
Yeah.
Yep. Very complex.
I agree with all of those things. I also think that like every parent in America right now, or maybe across the world, is realizing that maybe we don't pay teachers as much as we should because, hey, you're basically getting free built-in childcare during the day so that you can go do your job. So it's a thought for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough situation. Okay, so we can probably move on to our main topic. So today is kind of a grab bag. We as we mentioned, we're going to primarily talk about the backwards compatibility blog post. But before we do, we would like to get our weekly people powered John's page number update. Where are you?
That's not a good face.
I think I'm I'm doing good. I'm on track. I think I'm at 153. I'm somewhere between. I think I'm at the end of chapter 6.
Is this your
7.
third?
It should be at 210
week of sabbatical or your 4th week of sabbatical?
By the end of this week, I need to be at 210.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
you're about a week behind.
2 more days. No. I got
2 more days for 60 pages. Well, 60 pages is 6 days worth of
70 pages. We're doing all right. I'm working through it. I got a couple of days next week that nobody's going to be around, so I'll be able to catch up.
And for the listeners following along, we'll have the author John Bacon himself on, I think it's September 24th.
That's when we're recording. Yeah,
it's when we're recording. So usually release about a week or week and a half after. So look for that beginning of October.
It's super enlightening. Every chapter I read, every chapter I read, I'm like, there's some great pieces to take out of that. And then you think about like running a community, and you think about like a community like the Drupal community, and you're just like, there are so many moving parts, and your brain starts to hurt a little bit.
So Nick, have you committed to reading the book? I have not. I'll probably decide early next week. So I've been taking, as I've mentioned a couple times on the show, I've been taking Fridays off. So I've been focusing on taking those off. I do read books generally, unlike John. So I don't need to use my vacation for that. So I haven't decided, but I think next week I'll pick it up and I'll try to get through it in a couple of weeks.
I will say my wife and my kids got me a hammock for like a portable hammock for Father's Day this year, and I was kind of like, what am I going to use this thing for?
Isn't that for sleeping, not for reading?
And a couple of weeks ago, I set it up in the yard, and I brought the book out, and I was reading, and I'm like, oh, this is great. So yesterday, it was a really, really nice day here, and I asked my wife, I'm like, hey, can you be done with work right at 5 so I can go out and read for an hour in the hammock? And it was great. So get a hammock, get a book, and
there you go.
Relax.
Awesome. Hey, speaking of community, we had some interaction over the last week or so from our community. I want to bring up a few things. We had Nathan send us a note that he said he recently got a development job working with Drupal, and he wanted to thank us for helping him prepare for that job. So it's like awesome to hear from that, hear things like that. When the listeners, you guys out there, you drop us a little note of appreciation, it makes a lot of this a lot easier to do. We also had a note from Nick, and it's not our Nick. It's
not me.
It's another Nick. He said he's a longtime listener, and he thanks for the quality of the content, and he wanted to let us know that he enjoys the random talk that we do at the beginning of each episode. So keep it up. So thanks for listening, Nick. I sometimes wonder if that section goes a little too long, but I guess at least Nick likes it. So two Nicks like it. So we'll keep going, I guess.
And based on this, more than 2/3 of our listeners, their names start with an N. We also have Graham, who has sent in a couple of comments, but he says, just a small, hopefully fun token of my appreciation for all I've learned from you guys. So.
And he sent us a little package in the mail with some little trinkets, some little gifts for us. So we appreciate that, Graham. Awesome to get someone from Canada and a Rush lover as well. So thanks for that.
It was interesting to me when people reach out and they're like, oh, this is awesome, and you guys do such good work. And I'm just like, cool. Because,
yeah.
I guess we're providing a service, and I'm glad people find it valuable. So on the community train, since we're talking about community stuff, let's just keep on talking about community stuff and what else but this year's New England Drupal Camp. So this year's New England Drupal Camp is going to be on Friday, November 6th. And yes, there is a format change. So we are going virtual. It will be a virtual conference, but here's the trick. It's actually going to be a BoffCon. So instead of doing the normal sessions, we are switching to Birds of a Feather, which if you don't know what those are, they are basically guided conversations on a topic. So there will be moderators guiding conversation, and it'll be basically an open conversation. So we're planning to have about 20 of them, I believe, throughout the day on different topics. We are also going to have a keynote. You can stay tuned to our social media and our website to hear more about our keynote speaker. But we are going to change the format a little bit, do the BoffCon. We are going to have a keynote in the middle of the day, and it's going to be one day this year on a Friday. So you can go to nedcamp.com nedcamp.org. Nedcamp.org.
.org.
Always mess that up.
Hey, I love BOFs. I mean, let's just picture yourself like you're in the middle or getting ready to start a translation project, and you would just love to pick people's brains about how to do translation in Drupal.
Yeah.
You look and see there's a BOF on translation. You get to sit for an hour with other people that are knowledgeable or learning about translation and kick around ideas. It's really valuable time to spend.
It's super interesting because I don't typically at conferences go to BOFs, and last year, I think at DrupalCon, I went to a BOF on like proposal writing or RFPs or something like that. And it was a super interesting conversation to hear how other people kind of price their work and how they reply to RFPs and like what write proposals and what they value versus don't value, and like kind of talking about different process elements. So yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be super interesting. And if you're out there and you're listening and you're wondering how you can sponsor, we actually changed our sponsorship model this year as well. We're doing digital sponsorships, and those are a set price, and you can sign up and we will digitally present you to our audience. So it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be an interesting change. And, with all of the other conferences out there kind of doing the virtual thing, I think the BoffCon is going to be, it's going to be a refreshing change, but we will see.
So next I want to talk a little bit and see what you guys think. I think I've expressed some concern to you both independently about this next thing I want to talk about. And maybe you have some additional thoughts you can share. Don't know, but I'm about to kick off a Drupal 8/9 (9) project. And we have the luxury on this project to do a lot of planning and testing. So we've kind of, it's from a Drupal 7 site going to Drupal 8/9. So we've sort of built this demo site that has all the complexities of the things that we want to build in this new site. So we've got some content types in there, and we're testing out all the things that we use. So we use translation. So we're testing out all the things in Drupal 8 translation. We had a difficult time in Drupal 7 translation, and we know what all the gotchas were. So we're testing all that stuff. We have used things like paragraphs and panels and stuff in the past. So we're looking in Drupal 8 to say, what is our best approach here? So we tried paragraphs out. We're trying non-paragraphs, and we're trying out LayoutBuilder. We want to go LayoutBuilder. So the concept, the general requirements for this website now in my mind are Drupal 8, LayoutBuilder, and translation. So those things, if you just think about it, sound like just all core deliverables, and this should be a no-brainer. And it turns out that there's a broken promise here for Drupal 8. So in Drupal 8, the promise was translations in core. So anything core works with translation. Did I understand that promise differently, guys? Did you understand that to be the promise?
No, I think that's accurate. I mean, that was one of the big selling points. Yeah.
Well, LayoutBuilder does not translate well. In fact, if you look out the tickets out for like stuff doesn't work in LayoutBuilder, it's written right in there that LayoutBuilder was not made to support translation. So it doesn't just work out of the box. Like you cannot translate blocks. You can't embed a block, which is really like when you think of LayoutBuilder, the idea is you have like these dynamic pages. You want a content administrator to create a landing page, be able to drop some content on it, and it should translate. It doesn't. And
so
it's incredibly frustrating, and I can't understand how we are at this point. And I've been hoping that I've been misunderstanding this, but it doesn't appear to be the case.
Well, I think one of the questions that I have is, like, they're just block instances. So the blocks themselves are translatable.
But hang on, Nick. So if I take a block, so I've done it all 100 ways to Sunday. Yep. If I just take a block, create it outside of LayoutBuilder, which I could do, right? And then drop it in, then put it into a layout from LayoutBuilder. It does. Yes. And I have translated it prior to that. It will not show up translated on that page. But if I take that same block and just stick it into the block layout, it will appear on that page translated.
Yeah. So the reason I think for that is
the same with views.
Yeah.
View titles. You put a view title, you can use a view title and it will translate into the layout. If you override that title when you're in LayoutBuilder, it will not translate.
Yeah, and I think it has to do with how layout stores individual block information.
Whatever the reason is, I don't understand how we've gotten to this far with the promise of this is in core, and Layout Builder doesn't support it. It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I both are on the same page with this. Like, I'm in the process of wrapping up my first project that has used Layout Builder extremely heavily. And the beginning of that project, Layout Builder was the greatest thing I've ever seen. It just allowed you to do what it does. You could place content wherever you want. Yeah, there were some rough edges. You had to write a couple of hooks and things to kind of clean up the interface for the end users and things like that. But it was incredibly powerful. But then the more I worked with it, the more I realized it's a great tool, but it's almost like it steps outside the Drupal sphere. Things that are normally very easy to do in Drupal just do not work with Layout Builder. So, for example, you can't build a view that shows you content that has specific content inside of a layout that I'm aware of. So, like, normally you could say, for example, if I tag this page with this tag, I can say, give me a view with all the content that has this tag. But if that tag is inside of a layout section, it's not going to know that it's there without like extra programming to get in there. So another thing, for example, I have a site that this particular site embeds a lot of web forms into layouts. Mm-hmm. The ability to say, does this section have a web form, takes custom code. Like, there's no way, like the sections
when you go to web form
in them.
But when you go to web form, right, you're now dealing with a contrib module.
Yeah.
So so there's some things there that I could see, hey, yeah, maybe those are deep kind of complexities. I'm talking about stuff that is core, and I've done nothing. I've installed nothing outside of core. What's that?
Views is core as well.
Right.
Views is core, true. And it's the same thing. And I just see that, Layout Builder will have its place, and I think its place is basically going to be like blog pages that marketing people are going to be editing, because it's going to allow them to like easily put media next to text or vice versa. And then if you're going to do translation stuff, you're probably going to have to go back old school, where you essentially have two different language pages and you find a way to tie them together. You're essentially going back to the Drupal 7 way, which is horrendous.
Well, it's interesting. So it's interesting to me as you guys are talking, I agree that the lack of translation support is like kind of concerning. But what's even more concerning to me is I just looked up the Drupal development roadmap, and for 9.1, there are a few things on here like, Drupal 10 readiness, automatic updates, admin UI, and whatnot. But Layout Builder isn't even on this list anymore. So it's a little concerning to me to see that like Layout Builder isn't even on this list, and like that the thinking is that maybe like, oh, Layout Builder is good enough, or that the fact that it doesn't translate well is somehow acceptable. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that anybody's ever told me that. I'm just saying that, like, based on this page or it not being on this page, like, even if it said Layout Builder, Drupal 9.1, TBD, like, we don't know what we're going to get out in 9.1, I would say, okay, well, you're fine. But at least it's on this page, and it's something that somebody's got an eye on, right?
I can see, I've only played with Layout Builder prior to now that I've really started to, like, investigate every little piece of it. And I can see there's a big ecosystem around it. There's lots of contrib modules that are solving problems. And I can see the huge value in this tool, right?
Yeah.
The problem is I get this one minor requirement that makes all of it
but it's
unusable.
Not minor. It's not minor.
Yeah, no, right. It's not a minor requirement, right?
Even to Nick's point,
a
marketing department that wants to use Layout Builder to build their pages, and they're a multinational company, translation is going to be a huge thing for them. They're not going to want to have a developer have to build some sort of custom routing, something or other, and B, they're not going to want to build two versions of the content. That's not the point.
I think you're underestimating what multinational marketing departments want to do.
Not really though. I mean,
not that they want to, but those are some of the most complex sites that I've ever worked on is multinational marketing sites.
But one of our clients has that exact use case, right? They need to translate their content. They don't want to duplicate content.
And do you use LayoutBuilder?
And no, they're still using paragraphs because they rebuilt before LayoutBuilder was released. Was in core. But like on the next go around, if they were like, oh, we want to use LayoutBuilder, I'd have to say, maybe we do that, but probably not because you need translation.
Yeah, and it's not that translation is a small thing, or even LayoutBuilder is a small thing. Right. And to the people maintaining LayoutBuilder's credit, they're very, very active. They're actually more active than most core subsystems I've seen. And maybe we can have one of them on the show at some point to kind of talk about this because it feels like a bigger topic. But I think Steven's point is really that, one of the really, really big selling points of Drupal 8 was that translation is in core. It just works with core everywhere. There's and to be fair, other than vendor specific issues with translation is rock solid in Drupal 8. Like in Drupal 7, there's always finicky stuff. Drupal 8, I've never had a problem with it. In LayoutBuilder, if LayoutBuilder was a contrib module, it'd be like, okay, well, LayoutBuilder's contrib. Like Gutenberg. If Gutenberg didn't work with translation, it's contrib. Okay,
right, exactly.
It's a complex thing.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
But LayoutBuilder and translation are both
and it feels, and when you read the open tickets, it feels like it's being retrofitted, like things were done in Drupal 7, like when paragraphs didn't work with translation and people worked on it. Finally, it kind of worked, but it was never quite right. It feels like that's the direction this is going. And it's kind of unfair for me to say that because I'm not in the middle of it. I've only just started to dig into it, but I actually am at the point that I might have to build a project at 5 years after Drupal 8 was launched and not use LayoutBuilder, although LayoutBuilder hasn't been around that long. I might not be able to use it, which is appalling to me.
It's interesting. There's an issue from March, it looks like, for Drupal 9.1 that is talking about LayoutBuilder and making LayoutBuilder translatable.
Right.
So it looks like it's on somebody's radar.
Oh, it is.
The fact that it's off the roadmap is kind of shocking to me. The other thing too, that kind of comes to mind here is that, I just feel like, to your point, Stephen, like it just feels like this should have higher priority, right? Like your core is translated and like, the core translation system is great. They rewrote it for Drupal 8. It works really well. And like to not have this as be part of it seems like a major flaw.
And it's not the only thing with LayoutBuilder. Like I said, LayoutBuilder is great. It's not really a knock on them, but like I said, for example, if you're in the pre-process hook for a layout, by default, layout doesn't know what node you're on or what entity you're on. Like you have to have a core patch. Like if you're in the layout process, like be able to say, which node am I on? What should I expect to see here? You have to have a core patch.
Really?
So the layout is rendering and that's such a deep patch for the LayoutBuilder module that it then conflicts with many, many other patches that you would also need. Like there's features that we could not deploy because there's just 3 or 4 patches that all touch the same subsystem because it's so deep in the system. It breaks. It broke Quick Edit for me. Quick Edit just didn't work in certain circumstances with LayoutBuilder. That required a patch. And so there's multiple, and like I said, views. Like there's no way to say, say you have a layout and you always have a block that has like data about the node that you're on. It has tags, it has dates, things like that. Views doesn't have any insight into that. So then you end up having to still have some metadata on the node. So then you have to train your users. Okay, well, if you're editing the tags, you have to hit edit. If you're editing anything else, you have to hit layout. And then you have to train them to know where the
but I mean
content goes.
that's true of
What else? Nothing else.
I mean, like, even in, well, I guess not so much in paragraphs because you field paragraphs and then you move them around the page. But I mean, the division there makes sense. Where you edit fields on the edit page.
No,
and then you position them. You
it
position
makes
them
sense
in
for
the layout page.
It makes sense for a Drupal developer or Drupal, somebody who knows Drupal, but for somebody who just wants to change the information about a page, they should have one place to change the information for the page. Like you shouldn't have
they do unless they want to.
They don't.
Unless they want to move it, they do.
Because they don't. If they need to edit something like a tag or something like that, they have to hit edit. If they need to edit content on the page, they have to hit layout. That's two different places to edit information about the page. It depends
how you set up your node, though. You could have all of those fields under the edit tab and then just place them with layout. You don't have to have like inline editing there.
Can you? But what if you don't want them to be visible? What if they're what if they're?
You can pull the fields.
Do you know what? We're going down into a rabbit hole here, guys.
Yeah,
we're gonna have to climb out of this one.
Yeah. We need to. I think we need to have I think it's clear we need to have another LayoutBuilder show, and now that we've all used it.
I was quickly trying to figure out the other day, like who the key maintainer of LayoutBuilder. It's harder when it's a core module to see. I
think Tim Plunkett's your guy.
Is it? Okay.
I think it's Tim Plunkett. Every time I comment in the LayoutBuilder channel and Drupal Slack.
So maybe I'll try to reach out to Tim and see if he wants to just chat with us about maybe some general questions. And
reach out.
Yeah.
No, we can reach out to him. I mean, and like I said, he has responded. Wait, there's a talking Drupal emoticon.
What?
In Drupal Slack. Sorry, that's super cool. I didn't realize somebody did that. Like if you go in the LayoutBuilder. Sorry, we're going deeper in this rabbit hole. I just went in the layouts channel in Drupal Slack. In the last comment, somebody joined it, and then somebody reacted with a talking Drupal emoticon. Do you guys see that?
Yeah, no, it's in there.
I see it.
Oh my god, I am so excited.
That's crazy.
Who did that?
I don't know. It was last week.
We could probably find out.
How did you do that? You just did it too, Nick.
Yeah. Colon talking dash Drupal colon.
Oh wow. Okay.
And now we've devolved into figuring out how,
all right. Well, let's I'm going to get us back on track here.
Yeah.
So the topic of our show today. So that sounded like a real bitch section. Can I say that word?
Nope.
Bitch session. Okay, I can't. You sure?
I don't know. The FCC.
That sounded like a real complaining session about LayoutBuilder, and I guess it was a little bit.
I mean, from my perspective, I'm blown away by LayoutBuilder. There's certainly things to be improved, but it's
that was
way
the point
beyond.
I wanted to make. LayoutBuilder is the future of page creation. It just needs work.
Yeah. Yeah, like anything in Drupal, iteration is the thing. And if we waited until it was perfect, I think it definitely came out at the right time. And I think it's in some situations it's going to be perfect. I think my main point is, I've realized it's not something I'm going to use on every page every time. It's going to be used in some circumstances.
Nor would you. Would I think you would you want to?
Yeah, it's just, I think all I've had to do is reset my expectations and kind of narrow the scope a bit, but that doesn't make it any less useful. I mean, I have so many sites that have, 50 different paragraphs to allow slightly different layouts, whereas LayoutBuilder would just be, 5 different block types and a couple of different layouts, and everything would be covered.
And not to dig further down the rabbit hole, but I'd like to give a shout out to Chad Hester for adding that talking Drupal emoji. Chad looks like he added that back in 2016, probably when he was on the show.
Wow. Awesome.
Wow.
All right. To our primary show topic in the last 10 minutes.
We'll see. We should put out a poll after this to see how much people love the chit chat before the show.
yeah. It's going to go right down the tubes, right? All right. So,
and just so you guys know, the thunder started here, so this could be short lived for me.
Yeah, same here too. So what are we? Probably 8 miles apart by the way the crow flies.
Yeah, if we were flying, we'd be
Right.
now probably less than that.
Yeah,
But
probably
anyway,
less than that. All right.
let's talk about backwards compatibility.
All right. So Jeff Geerling was on the show last week. Awesome show. If you haven't listened to it, check it out. 261. Always a great pleasure to talk with Jeff. The day before the show, he released or published a new article on his blog post called Did Breaking Backward Compatibility Kill Drupal? And we didn't get a chance to really dig into that during the show. I went through it this week, and I think you guys did too. So I'm interested in what your thoughts, if you have any general thoughts about the article are. We have a link to it in last week's show notes and this week's show notes if you want to read those, read the article yourself. It also references an article that he wrote in April of 2019, I think is also relevant when he kind of did his review of Drupal 8, the good and the bad kind of thing. And he kind of touches on some of the same points that he thinks are really a challenge for Drupal 8. Basically, the synopsis of the article is that if you look at the number of websites using Drupal, it's been decreasing. And his thought is that it's because Drupal 8 broke backward compatibility and people with Drupal 7 sites basically had to do a rewrite.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I took away from it is that Drupal installs are decreasing, and I think that's true. I don't necessarily think it's for the same reason that he's saying. I don't think it's because backwards compatibility broke. I think it's because most major versions broke backwards compatibility. Yeah, you could update from Drupal 6 to Drupal 7, but I've done that. I have one site that I've updated from Drupal 5 to 6 to 7 using the update process. Every other site I've ever worked on was a rewrite. I think one of the big things was fatigue, because it was, well, two things. One, it was fatigue. It took so long to update. And two, the paradigm changed completely. Like, now 6 to 7, it was still a huge change, broke backwards compatibility, and you had to rewrite the site. But a lot of your knowledge still transferred for the developer. Whereas Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, your knowledge didn't necessarily transfer. You could have been a Drupal 7 expert, but with Drupal 8, it's now object-oriented, using Symfony, and the modules took significantly more effort to move.
It would be interesting to see like what the stats are. And if you look at Jeff's post, it has some graphs in it, but like it'd be interesting to see what the stats are on Drupal 7 sites that have custom modules, or like the number of custom modules that they have, and if they're, if they've considered updating to Drupal 8. Because, to Nick's point, I think that's kind of a blocker for people. I also think that the need to upgrade isn't as great, and now it's even less great, which is poor English on my part, but because the end of life has been pushed out longer, right? So like there's no real strong necessity to spend that money or that time to upgrade my site when I have essentially another year, right, before I need to do it. Again, not that your site's going to stop working, but and at that point, like I could just go from 7 right to 9, right? There's no point in me going to 8.
I think part of the article's point though is that the paradigm shift that happened from 7. What's that?
Oh, go ahead.
The paradigm shift that happened basically turned off a number of developers. So instead of upgrading, they've abandoned Drupal and moved to other technologies. That's what the article to me implies. Yeah. That there's been an abandonment.
I think that's actually a pretty big part of it, because One of the things I was thinking about preparing for the show is
grumpy developers. Grumpy developers are part
No,
of
well,
it. Keep
no,
going.
no,
It's not about being
No,
grumpy though. It's about
yeah, it's not about that.
It's about changing your entire skill set, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the casual developer could use Drupal 7 and work with it. That's not the case in Drupal 8. If you're if you're gonna customize any code or anything, it's not just like kind of like messing with a few hooks, and you have to actually learn some new skills that you might not have or be interested in learning.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things I was thinking. I mean, Drupal 7's always been famous for a steep learning curve. But I'm thinking like if I started,
it was a Drupal learning curve. It wasn't like a PHP learning curve.
Well, right. It was Drupal centric, and now we've moved to being more
programmer
inclusive and more more industry standard, right? And it seems to me that like the hardliners that are like very much Drupal centric may not love that change or even really want to take the time and energy to kind of like, as Steven said, learn those new skills, right?
I mean, I have a few comments on both of those things. So here's the thing. I was thinking about if Drupal 8 was the Drupal that was out when I started getting into this business, Drupal wouldn't have been where I started. I mean, it's just too steep of a curve in general it's not the Drupal learning curve. It's that there's a developer learning curve. And I wasn't a developer when I started this. So with Drupal 7, Drupal 5, Drupal 6, you could download the code, put it on a server, and then there was a module for everything. You could piece together fairly complex sites just by adding modules. And I'd say, in the first 3 years of my business, the most that I did was copy a snippet from a blog post or something. Like I didn't write custom modules. I didn't even know how to. I would, find a blog post that said, oh, if you need to update, this block label, then put this snippet in your template, your PHP template. And I think that's part of what pushed those people away. The other thing is, Drupal 8 is a much better experience as a developer now that I've worked with it for a while. It took me 6 months to get comfortable with it, but you have to be a developer. There are so many people that would just build websites that weren't developers. Like they didn't know, they don't even use Git. They would just install stuff. And I look at all the sites that I started with. I have a server with 10 or 15 projects on it. They're small sites, maybe 20, 30 pages. None of those companies have a need for CI. None of those companies have a need for that whole process. None of them are going to pay the overhead it takes to upgrade to Drupal 8. So when Drupal 7 goes away, they're going to go with Squarespace. They're going to go with, Wix. They're going to go
for
with
those smaller sites.
HTML.
And that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
I mean, to be fair, it's what I recommend. If I have a family member or something that somebody that's looking for a smaller website, I'm like, go to Squarespace. Like Squarespace is great and it's cheap and like you can get a whole bunch of stuff out of the box, right?
Exactly. But a lot of those types of sites were built by people. Like the first couple of years of my business, a lot of those types of sites were built by people like me.
I guess
they didn't have a developer's background. They just downloaded Drupal.
I guess I'm struggling a little bit with that because like even to just download Drupal, right? You still need to have some know-how, right? It's not like it just magically worked, right? Like to me, it feels like Drupal 8 is a lot easier to install than Drupal 7 was, right? I can still download the code base of Drupal 8. I can run a few commands. I guess you need to have Composer now, so you'd have to make sure you could install that or have that installed. But I don't know. I don't know if like Drupal 7 was any easier.
Drupal 8 is significantly more complex. I mean, Drupal 5, I downloaded the tarball, installed WAMP, and put it there. And then when I was ready to move it to production, quote unquote, I opened FileZilla and copied everything.
You could still do that today.
I guess my point there is though that
I suppose
like a developer is doing that, whether they're like super junior developer, or like no marketing person is doing that, right? Like no marketing person's taking that initiative, in my opinion. Like, or need no, like once you get WAMP involved, or like, FileZilla, I mean, everybody knows how to FTP, right? But like, once you get like a local environment technology involved, like you've crossed a line there in my mind.
But I mean, that's one of the things that you don't like. A lot of the really small freelancers or even companies, there is no local development environment. Like they literally would just put it on a server somewhere, and that's what they worked with. And I think the bigger point is, even 2 or 3 years into my career, like I still wasn't really writing code that much. I would use feeds to import. Like I would use feeds to import content from some random place. And then I would use rules to then say, okay, if this happens, do this. If that happens, do that. Like all that kind of stuff, like rules doesn't exist for Drupal 8. All that stuff has moved to just custom code. And you have to have, like, you can't build a Drupal 8 site now without custom code.
You can still use feeds if you want to. I mean, I think for me, like looking at the stats, right? Like why aren't people adopting Drupal 8? I just don't feel like there's a huge need to, right? There's no huge push unless you want something like LayoutBuilder. You're using the translation system and you want better translation support. You want media. I just think that like the need to upgrade it just isn't there, and people can just wait until Drupal 9. I think we'll see when Drupal 9 it has more wide module support. I think we'll see a lot of people, and end of life for Drupal 7 starts getting closer. I think we're going to see a ton of people switching to Drupal 9. And I don't disagree with you, Nick. I think there are people out there that are just going to say, this was like a hobby site. I'm just going to move it to, Squarespace or something like that because it's just less effort and easier.
There were two things. There were two things there's two things that jumped out to me that I wish Jeff had addressed that he didn't in that article. And one is he's using the measurement of the adoption of Drupal by the number of installs as some measure of whether Drupal 8 is successful or not, and no measurement of or any way to look at, well, maybe there's less installs over the last 4 years, but how about a measurement of the complexities of the websites that are using it? Like how many large websites versus small websites? Right. That seemed to be missing, and to me would be an important measurement of this. The other thing is that he sort of was criticizing Drupal, and he actually called it a massive misstep, Drupal 8, in changing the paradigm. But I think, and maybe I'll post this as a comment later to him, is, well, what would he have suggested as an alternative? Because for Drupal to keep going for another 20 years, it could not stay where it was. It needed to change so it could grow in a better way. So what was the other solution, Stephen, other than that?
Does he in that, are you at that point in the article? I'm just curious if he says why he thinks it's a huge misstep.
I think when he says it's a misstep, it's in relation to just the tone of his article being the change of paradigm and the pressure that it was like abandoning the existing developer community and just moving on. To me, I kind of feel like Drupal 8 was almost like it had to be done, and going from 7 to 8 was like ripping the Band-Aid off. You had to do something at some point. So you're either going to just delay it forever or just kind of reset at some point, because it couldn't go another 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I think about too is, yes, I have far fewer projects in Drupal 8 than Drupal 7, but those projects are far larger, far more complex, and far better, far more stable than any Drupal 7 site. Like one of my big barometer points is, I would never build a Drupal 7 site today. Like I'm not going to build a site and not just because, like, if Drupal 8 was bad, I wouldn't be using it. I would be using something else.
So,
and I think Drupal 9, if Drupal 9, Drupal 10, Drupal 11, and so on can do what Drupal 9 supposedly did, a painless update that just, it's going to lag, even if it lag. I mean, looking at it, even if Drupal 9 takes 7 months for modules to update, that's not a big deal because nothing was added in between. Like you can just update when you're ready. Like we were talking about this a little bit before the show. Or maybe the show had started at that point and we were still just kind of chatting. That was
it's been one big chat today.
Who remembers?
But yeah, like I Drupal 8, there are pain points. Like Composer, still every 2 or 3 months, Composer does something that just makes me hate it with the burning passion. But Drupal as a developer is so much better. Drupal 8 is so much better to work with than Drupal 7. Like even just the ability to have a complex site with only 1 or 2 custom modules versus Drupal 7, every single site had at least 100 contributed modules. And I have some sites that I work on that I still maintain that have 400 contributed modules and 200 custom modules to get what they need.
So it's super interesting because I have used the find function in my browser and found the section where he talks about, the misstep. And it's interesting because it very much to me seems like his frustration is the fact that Drupal has made this shift to make the upgrade process from 8 to 9 to 9 to 10 easier, and that it's more of a move to focus on high dollar enterprise projects as opposed to those projects that Nick was talking about earlier that might be like pet projects or the lower, as Jeff says, the lower, less profitable end of the CMS market. And, to me, I kind of see both sides of it, I think, where like, I love Drupal. I love spinning up Drupal sites and just tinkering with things. I've been doing on my break, I've been doing a little bit of that with the Drupal recommended project and just spinning up Drupal sites. Again, I'm more of a developer than most people, I guess. But I think, for Drupal's longevity, like that simple upgrade between major versions is a necessity. So like, as I look at this, like, Drupal 8 was a major change to the CMS, obviously.
Yeah.
To me, like to consider it a misstep is I can't agree with that. I think it's a step in the right direction. Yeah. And I think people have to grow and they have to know that maybe Drupal isn't the right CMS for a smaller, marketing site, with the advent or the addition of Gatsby and other static site generators and other technologies out there. I think there are, there are different options. And, like we said, Squarespace could be a perfectly good option. And it's perfectly cheap, but, I think for flexibility and the amount that you can do with Drupal, there's a module for everything, right? I think Drupal still has a huge space.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's just fewer enterprise-sized projects out there. People start small businesses all the time and small projects and want websites for that. But Drupal, like you said, Drupal is not really the CMS for that anymore.
I don't know that it isn't though. Like if you were going to start if you were starting a company and you had somebody that was in the tech space that could install Drupal, you could very easily start a marketing site on Drupal and then use that as a platform to grow with your business, right?
The funny thing is, John, to your point, like if you install Drupal 8 out of the box and Drupal 7 out of the box, you can get way farther and further, whichever one, in Drupal 8
Absolutely.
And putting a site together than you could in 7. Yep. So much farther along you could be.
Honestly, if you're going to install Drupal now, you're not going to install Drupal 7. Like you're just not going to do it because you have media, you have translation, you have LayoutBuilder, you have all these nice features, right?
Yeah, but somebody who doesn't know Drupal isn't going to know any of that, to be honest.
But they don't really need to.
But they don't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
no,
think
that's true.
I see Jeff's point, but it just seems again, it seems like there are a couple of people that are kind of disenfranchised here, right? The developer that doesn't want to necessarily learn a new skill set to keep up with the way Drupal's moving.
Right.
That person is unfortunately left out to in the cold. But the other person is like the person that's like got a small site and they need a CMS, right? And I think, to be fair, I think Drupal is trying to make it easier to install and try out Drupal. That keeps coming up in Dree's notes year after year. Like, we're trying to make it easier for people to get this thing up and running.
Just do that after you put translations into LayoutBuilder.
Yeah.
Right. Focus on Steve's issues first.
But before we close, I think there's one other thing that kind of contributes to this too that was talked about. One of Drupal's perennial problems is pre-built themes. There's never been a ton of pre-built themes, but for Drupal 7, there were a good 10 or 15 semi-decent, somewhat customizable themes that you could install for Drupal 7 on the front end, and then just tweak a little bit so you get something semi-custom. With Drupal 8, there's even fewer like pre-built themes that you can really use like that aren't just Bartik,
I don't know about that, Nick.
Maybe I just haven't looked in a while, but the last time I looked, they were like 2.
We should look at that because I've been playing with them recently. I think there's more than you think there are.
Also, you got to look at the. Man, I am blanking on the word.
But to your point, Nick, there's never been a good theme ecosystem in Drupal.
Yeah, nothing.
It's not a thriving business like it was with WordPress. It's a big business for WordPress people to have themes.
Yep, exactly.
Man, I'm totally blanking on the word for
banana.
No. Not
chicken.
Oh God, you guys are terrible. Not an install profile for Drupal, but a
distribution.
There it is. Yeah. Thank you. So like, that's the other aspect, right? There are a lot of distributions out there that people can jump into and get going in a direction pretty quickly. So I think like there's some power in that too, depending on what industry you're in, what you're trying to do. I don't know. I personally am excited about Drupal 8 and the ease of upgrading because, from even the small startup standpoint, right? Who has the money to like rebuild a website every time a new major version of your CMS comes out? Nobody.
Well, it's been 5 years, so I mean, at some point in those 5 years, I would think somebody would come up with that budget. But sure, I see your point.
But looking at from a standpoint of somebody that's starting a startup or somebody that's in enterprise that's looking at like how they need to spend their budget every year, like, or every other year, like coming up with, a couple $100,000 or a large sum of money to upgrade from major version to major version is not appealing. And now being able to say like, okay, from Drupal 8 to Drupal 9 to Drupal 10, it's going to be the same system. We're just going to add new features to it. And we might have to change some things here and there for code deprecation, but we're not going to have to basically rebuild the whole site, remigrate all the content, do all of those like building block steps again and again is hugely valuable. And, I think people need to see that. And I think people need to understand that that's kind of why the change was made.
Well, Jeff's first sentence of that blog post is, first of all, Drupal is not dead. So,
it's not, because we all still have jobs.
We all still have jobs, and people writing blog posts like this and articles like this is helpful for the community to think through these things. So if you're interested in reading about this further, I encourage you to read the article, but then go into the comments. There's a number of them there. Support for Jeff, not so much support for Jeff, and just different points of view, and it's really educational.
Hey, I think all in all, Jeff is great, and he's doing amazing things. And I think healthy debate is good. As a country and as a world, we should learn to do more healthy debating. And on that note, if you would like to healthily debate with us or have questions or feedback, you can reach out on Twitter at Talking Drupal. You can hit us up in the Talking Drupal Slack channel on the Drupal Slack, or you can email us at show@talkingdrupal.com. If you're interested in getting updates, you can do that by signing up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
We'd also like to take this moment to thank our patrons for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing the Become a Patron button. And patrons get a private feed that includes a little bit pre-show and post-show. So if you enjoy even more banter and mic checks, then becoming a patron is for you.
So, John Picozzi, where can people find you online?
Well, you can find me on all the major social networks at John Picozzi, and you can find out about Oomph Inc. at oomphinc.com.
How about you, Nick?
You can find me online pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, NICXVAN. And how about you, Stephen?
I'm Stephen Cross on Twitter with a PH. And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking. Later.